Jaya Jaya Sri Caitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Advaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda
Jaya Jaya Sri Caitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Advaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda.
So I'm not sure if did we read this verse? No, right? I think here we start from here. The Lord then recited. Is it? Yeah.
The
So
top, above it, what it says before
okay.
this.
Yeah. Always read Bhagavatam. Then you will understand. Yeah, study. You'll be able to study the Vedanta Sutra. Yeah, we read that.
Yeah, we read that.
Okay. Thank you. So, can somebody please read?
No. So then I'll read. Yeah.
Please. Yeah.
The Lord then recited many verses from authoritative scriptures like Srimad Bhagavatam, the Bhagavad Gita, and the Nrsimha Tapani Upanishad. First, he quoted this verse from the Bhagavad Gita. Brahma Bhuta Prasan Atma na sochati na kanchati sama sarveshu bhuteshu mat bhaktim labate param. When one actually becomes self-realized, knowing that he is Brahman, he becomes happy and joyful, and he no longer feels any lamentation or hankering. Such a person sees all living entities on an equal level, and he becomes a pure devotee of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Next, he quoted a statement from Shankaracharya's commentary on the Nrsimhatapani Upanishad 2.5.16. This statement says that when a person is actually liberated, he can understand the transcendental pastimes of the Supreme Lord and thus engage in his devotional service. Lord Chaitanya also quoted a verse from the second canto of Srimad Bhagavatam 2.1.9, in which Sukdev Goswami states that although he was elevated to the liberated stage and free from the clutches of Maya, he was still attracted by the transcendental pastimes of Krishna. Consequently, he studied Srimad Bhagavatam from his great father Vyasadeva.
So Lord Chaitanya is continuing to preach to Prakashananda Saraswati that to become a pure devotee of the Lord. Krishna himself is saying that when one is liberated, one becomes a pure devotee. That is real liberation. Means understanding I'm not the body, I'm spirit soul, I'm part and parcel of Krishna, and engaging in devotional service to Krishna. 1854 Bhagavad Gita, and Shankaracharya also. Shankaracharya is saying real liberation. When one is actually liberated, so not the temporary liberation, the real liberation. He can understand Krishna's leelas are transcendental, not ordinary, not material, and thus engage in his devotional service. So we can see that Shankaracharya is also saying that liberation is not, the liberation is from where real life begins. It's not the end, but it's the beginning of understanding Krishna's position, beginning of pure devotional service. And Sukadev Goswami says in the second canto that he was liberated. He already understood that he's not the body, he's the soul. So he was enjoying that position, the Brahma Bhuta platform. He was not identifying with his body. But when he heard Bhagavatam, he got attracted to hearing Bhagavatam and he became a pure devotee. So just merely being situated on the on the platform that I am the soul is not enough. From there, we proceed on to engage in devotional service. Otherwise, we'll again come back to material activities because the soul is always active.
Next, Lord Chaitanya quoted another shlok from Srimad Bhagavatam 3.15.43, which deals with the Kumaras. When the Kumaras entered the temple of the Lord, they were attracted by the aroma of the flowers and tulsi leaves offered to the lotus feet of the Lord with pulp of sandalwood. Simply by the Kumaras smelling the aroma of these offerings, their minds turned to the service of the Supreme Lord. Although the Kumaras were already liberated souls, it is stated elsewhere in Bhagavatam 1.7.10 that even if one is a liberated soul and is actually free from material contamination, he can still become attracted to rendering the Supreme Lord devotional service that is costless and unhampered by any material propensity. This is because God is so attractive, and because He is so attractive, He is called Krishna.
So the liberated souls are the souls who are in knowledge of the Brahman. Aham Brahmasmi. I am Brahman. I'm the soul. And Krishna even attracts them. They're already happy in that position. Liberation means no more material misery. So there is already happiness. But happiness in Krishna consciousness is even sweeter that it attracts the liberated souls. It attracted Sukadev Goswami, attracted four Kumaras, because Krishna is all attractive. He attracts each and every one of us. Each and every one of us have an eternal loving relationship with Krishna. And that's why we are so attracted to him, no? There's a natural bond, like between a mother and a child. There's always a natural bond, is there? Can't deny it. Similarly, there is a natural bond between Krishna and the living entity.
In this way, Lord Chaitanya began to discuss the Atmaram verse from Srimad Bhagavatam with Prakashanand Saraswati, Lord Chaitanya's admirer, the Maharashtrian Brahmana, related that the Lord had earlier explained this verse in 61 different ways. Everyone assembled was very eager to hear the different versions of the Lord's explanation of the Atmaram Shloka. And since they were so eager, Lord Chaitanya again explained the shloka in the same way that he had explained it to Sanatan Goswami. Everyone who heard the explanations of the Atmaram Shlok was amazed. Indeed, everyone considered Lord Chaitanya to be none other than Sri Krishna himself.
So the Maharashtrian Brahmana who invited Lord Chaitanya for the lunch is telling Prakashananda Saraswati that Atmaram verses in Bhagavatam, that even the liberated persons are attracted to devotional service. And how Lord Chaitanya explained it in 61 ways to Sanatana Goswami. And so everyone also wants to hear, oh, what is the explanation? They also want to hear. And Lord Chaitanya also explained this Atmaram verse to Sārvabhauma Bhattacharya. And so now the sannyasis, they have no doubt. They are like, Lord Chaitanya has to be Krishna himself. He's able to explain the scriptures in such a way that he is the knower of the scriptures. He's the speaker of the scriptures. That's why he can explain it in that way. When we create a dish, for example, then we know it very well. We know how to explain it. We know how to teach it. So Krishna, or Chaitanya, is the original speaker of the Vedas.
So the Atmaram Shloka, it's one, or because it says Shloka. So, or is it at 64?
No, it's one shlok, and
Shlok.
Lord Chaitanya, he
Uh-huh.
explained it in 61
In
ways.
60. Okay. Explained it.
Yeah. It's one verse.
Talks with Sārvabhauma Bhattacharya. When Lord Caitanya met Sārvabhauma Bhattacharya at Jagannath Puri, the Bhattacharya, being the greatest logician of the day, wanted to teach the Lord Vedanta philosophy. Since the Bhattacharya was an elderly man, the age of Lord Chaitanya's father, he took compassion on the young sannyasi and requested him to learn the Vedanta Sutra from him. Otherwise, the Bhattacharya maintained it would be difficult for the youthful Lord Chaitanya to continue as a sannyasi. When the Lord the Bhattacharya began to teach him in the temple of Jagannath. The Bhattacharya spoke to the Lord about the Vedanta Sutra continually for 7 days, and the Lord heard him without speaking a word. On the eighth day, the Bhattacharya said, "You haven't been hearing the Vedanta Sutra from me for the past. You have been hearing the Vedanta Sutra from me for the past week, but you have not asked any questions, nor have you indicated whether I am explaining it nicely. So I cannot tell whether you are understanding me or not."
So it's very interesting the way Lord Chaitanya, Sārvabhauma Bhattacharya meets Lord Chaitanya, because Lord Chaitanya just enters into Jagannath temple. It's the first time he's seeing the Lord, and he faints in ecstasy. And the guards were gonna, throw him out, but Sārvabhauma Bhattacharya was the head that time. So he was like, "No, wait, wait, wait. This seems to be not an ordinary person, but he's so young and so beautiful." So Bhattacharya took him home, and then the devotees came and they chanted Hare Krishna, and the Lord came above. And then Sārvabhauma Bhattacharya was like, "You're so young, how will you remain a sannyasi?" And the Lord was very beautiful. He was only 24 years old when he took sannyas, very young man. So he said, "I'm going to teach you the Vedanta Sutra." So Lord Chaitanya said, "Okay, sure." 7 days he's hearing, and then Bhattacharya is like, "You're hearing me, you're not saying anything, what's happening? Are you understanding? Are you not understanding? You have no questions, no feedback. He wants some feedback, like what's happening."
"I am a fool," the Lord replied. "I have no capacity to study the Vedanta Sutra, but since you asked me to hear you, I'm trying to listen. I am simply listening to you because you said that it is the duty of every sannyasi to hear the Vedanta Sutra. But as far as your explanation is concerned, that I cannot understand. That I cannot understand." Thus, the Lord indicated that in the Mayavad Sampradaya, there are many so called sannyasis who, even though illiterate and unintelligent, hear the Vedanta Sutra from their spiritual master just as a matter of formality. Although they listen, they do not understand anything. As far as Lord Chaitanya was concerned, the reason he said he did not understand the explanation of the Bhattacharya was not because it was too difficult for him to understand, but because he did not approve of the Mayavadi interpretation.
So Lord Chaitanya, very humble. It says, "I don't have the intelligence to study Vedanta Sutra, but you told me you're going to speak it to me, so I'm going to listen." So then Prabhupada is pointing out that many may not even understand the Vedanta Sutra, but they're just hearing it as a formality. And then, yeah, let's continue.
When the Lord said that He was an uneducated fool and could not follow the expositions. The Bhattacharya replied, "If you do not follow what I am saying, why don't you inquire? Why do you simply sit silently? It appears that you do have something to say about my explanations." "My dear sir," the Lord replied, "as far as the Vedanta Sutra itself is concerned, I can understand the meaning quite well, but I cannot understand your explanations. There is nothing difficult about understanding the meaning of the original aphorisms of the Vedanta Sutra, but the way you explain them obscures the real meaning. You do not elucidate the direct meaning, but imagine something and thus obscure the true meaning. I think that you have a particular doctrine you are trying to expound through the aphorisms of the Vedanta Sutra."
So what the Lord is saying, Lord Chaitanya is saying, I very well understand Vedanta Sutra, but I don't understand the way you are explaining it. Because there is something wrong with your explanation. The direct meaning is very clear, but you are misinterpreting. There is a direct meaning, but you're not taking the direct meaning, and you are, you know, what do you say? Misinterpreting that direct meaning to in fact cover up the truth of what Vedanta Sutra is actually saying. And by your indirect meaning, you are misguiding what actually Vedanta Sutra is all about.
According to the Muktika Upanishad, there are 108 Upanishads. Among these are the Isha, Kena, Katha, Prashna, Mundaka, Mondukya, Taittiriya, Taittiriya, Aitariya, Chandogya, Brihad Arangyaka, Brahma, Kaivalya, Jabala, Shvetashvatara, Hamsa, Aruneya, Garbha, and Narayan Upanishad. The 108 Upanishads contain all knowledge about the absolute truth. Sometimes people ask why Vaishnavas use 108 prayer beads for chanting the holy names. We think it is because there are 108 Upanishads containing full knowledge of the absolute truth. On the other hand, some Vaishnava transcendentalists think that the 108 beads represent the 108 companions of Lord Krishna in his Ras dance.
Prabhupada is saying sometimes the Vaishnavas say 108 beads are to represent the Upanishads because Upanishads contain all the knowledge of the absolute truths. And some were saying they represent the gopis, the principal gopis in the Rasa dance.
Lord Chaitanya protested against misinterpretations of the Upanishads, rejecting any explanation which did not give their direct meaning. The direct interpretation is called Abhidavritti, Abhidavritti, whereas the indirect interpretation is called Lakshanavritti. The indirect interpretation serves no purpose. There are four kinds of understanding: direct understanding, pratyaksha; two, hypothetical understanding, anuman; three, historical understanding, aitihya; and four, understanding through sound, shabda. Of these four understanding from the Vedic scriptures, the sound representations of the absolute truth is the best method. Traditional Vedic students accept understanding through sound to be the best.
So, knowledge. How do we gain? Four kind. 4 types or 4 processes for us to get knowledge. Direct understanding. We experience, we experiencing something with our senses. That's called the direct understanding. Pratyaksha. We are able to see something. We are experiencing something. Hypothetical understanding. Anuman lagai denge. We hypothesize. Maybe it's like this. Assumptions. Maybe like that. Historical understanding that according to logic and according to the historical data. So it should be like this. And understanding through sound, hearing from the Vedic scriptures. That is the best. Hearing about the Supreme Lord from the Vedic scriptures.
And hearing from somebody, from some learned
Yes,
person, right?
hearing from the pure devotees. That is the best. That was the way that originally the knowledge was given. Was the speaker would speak and the devotee would hear. Like Sukadev Goswami speaking and Parikshit Maharaj is hearing.
The stool and bone of any living entity are considered to be impure according to the Vedic literature. Yet the same Vedic literature asserts that cow dung and conch shell are very pure. Apparently, these statements are contradictory, but because cow dung and conch shells are considered pure by the Vedas, they are accepted as pure by the followers of the Vedas. Without argument, without argument. If we try to understand the statements by indirect interpretation, cheating some
Creating,
hypothesis, we
create,
challenge
creating
evidential
some
authority,
hypotheses.
creating some hypothesis, then we challenge the evidential authority of the Vedic statements. In other words, Vedic statements cannot be accepted according to our imperfect interpretations. They must be accepted as they are. If they are not accepted in this way, there is no authority in the Vedic statements.
Just like a child asks the father, "What is this?" Father says, "It's pen." Child asks father, "What is this?" "It's a book." So similarly, the father is the authority for the child. So we learn from the Vedas. The Vedas are the authority. All knowledge is there in the Vedas. And the original speaker of Vedas is Krishna. And they are written by Vyasadeva, who's also an authority because he's incarnation of God. So, and Vedas are saying that bone and stool of any animal is contaminated, need to take shower. But yet, cow dung is stool of an animal, conch shell is bone. So then, what is happening? But the Vedas are saying they are pure. So the devotees use these things for deity worship based on the authority of the Vedas, not by some assumption. There's no need to overthink things, not making any hypothesis or assumptions, just accepting the authority of the Veda.
According to Lord Chaitanya, those who try to give some personal interpretation of Vedic statements are not at all intelligent. They mislead their followers by inventing their own interpretations. In India, there is a class of men known as Arya Samajas who say that they accept the original Vedas only and reject all other Vedic literature. The motive of these people, however, is to give their own interpretation. According to Lord Chaitanya, such interpretations are not to be accepted. They are simply not Vedic. Lord Chaitanya said that the Vedic statements of the Upanishads are like sunlight. Everything is clear and very distinct when it is seen in the sunlight. The statements of the Vedas are similarly clear and distinct. The Mayavadi philosophers simply cover the sunlight with a cloud of their misinterpretation.
So, hearing the scriptures as they are, not putting our own interpretation or imagination into it, just simply accepting. Krishna is saying, Man mana bhava bad bhakto. Engage your mind in thinking of me, become my devotee. But if we think, oh no, I have to become devotee of something else inside Krishna, offer obeisance to something inside or outside Krishna, then we are putting interpretation. We simply accept what Krishna is saying. Krishna is saying, you engage your mind in thinking of me. It's in Krishna, he's a person. Think of him. Offer obeisances to me, he is saying. We just simply accept what the statements are without trying to misinterpret them. Because when we misinterpret, then in fact the real meaning is lost. And then we are being misdirected and we will misdirect others. And the shabd, the hearing, shruti, hearing is also like reading is also like hearing. For example, now we are reading Srila Prabhupada's books. We are hearing from Srila Prabhupada. So we are hearing in the parampara. Of course, yeah. So,
Lord Chaitanya then said that all Vedic statements of the Upanishads aim at the ultimate truth, known as Brahman. The word Brahman means the greatest, and the greatest should immediately be understood to refer to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the source of all emanations. Unless the greatest possesses six opulences in full, he cannot be called the greatest. The greatest is therefore the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In other words, the Supreme Brahman is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In the Bhagavad Gita 10.12, the Supreme Personality of Godhead Krishna is accepted by Arjuna as the Supreme Brahman. The conceptions of the impersonal Brahman and the localized Supersoul are contained within the understanding of the Supreme Personality of Godhead.
So Lord Chaitanya is saying that all the Vedas, all the Upanishads is to understand Krishna. Krishna says, Vedascha sarver aham eva vedya. By all the Vedas, I am to be known. Why is one endeavoring to study the Vedas? To understand Krishna's position. When one comes to understand Krishna, that's the end of knowledge. So Brahman, ultimate truth is known as Brahman. Brahman, greatest. Greatest means nobody else can be greater. Means greatest means everything is there in the greatest. Cannot be anything which is not there. Otherwise, how can we use the word greatest? When we are saying greatest, means if this person is the greatest, nobody can be better than that person, right? So all the six opulences he has in full. He's the source of all emanations. So the Supreme Brahman is the Supreme Lord. He's the greatest. There's no one greater than him. Arjuna is also accepting this fact in Bhagavad Gita 10:12. He's saying, Krishna, you are Param Dhamma, Param Brahma, Param Dhamma. Right? You are the greatest. No one is greater than you. He's saying, I accept it, and all the authorities accept it. Narada, Sita, Devala, Vyasadeva, all authorities accept. So when one can understand Krishna's position, one can also understand the position of impersonal Brahman and Paramatma. There's a complete understanding of absolute truth that that God is a person, the supreme personality of Godhead. Krishna, and the Brahman is the effulgence coming from his body, and he's pervading this universe in his Paramatma feature. And any questions or comments?
No, quite clear. It's clear.
Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Thank you so much for